Okay, so moving on to the events that took place in 2014. Now, at that time, it was the time of the G20, and in the area of the Eka Showgrounds and all of that main central area was under heavy police surveillance, and they were using facial recognition cameras and things like that. Now, I'm not a criminal or anything. There's no reason. I'm not a terrorist. I'm not anything like that. They've got no reason to be pursuing me or anything like that, or anything. There's no justification for any of the things of which took place on that morning. But anyway, so what has ended up occurring is basically I was assaulted by police, and effectively I had basically gone to the RNO showgrounds. I had basically left there. Unfortunately, at the time, the trains weren't running until 4:30 in the morning, so I had to basically wait around until them trains were running. Hence, I was at the entrance of the Fortitude Valley train station where you go in, and whilst I was there, I had been talking to security guards and just mucking around. Like I wasn't causing any trouble or doing anything like that in any way whatsoever. I had left them. I then, because I figured they had to work, so best I don't be disturbing them. I've left them, and then I ended up just talking to some young African fellas, and I was basically saying, how are you finding Australia? And, there was no issue between us in any way whatsoever. Anyway, all of a sudden, I was rapidly approached by 4 police officers who had come around the corner, and they basically said, what's going on here? They've rapidly approached me. I had a police officer standing about 200 mils from my face. The other police officers were surrounding me and effectively falsely imprisoning me when I had done nothing wrong. They, then were basically harassing me. I was actually a law student. I know I probably don't look like that, but I was actually studying law at university, and so I knew they can't be doing what they're actually doing. So I've effectively sort of laughed at him, and I sort of made a bit of a joke of it, and I said, is there a problem, Mustafa? And he basically, because they've got some sort of authority complex, sort of took offence to me not being afraid of his, threat that he was trying to impose upon me. And it was clear that they were trying to provoke some sort of a negative response from me so they could then therefore attack me. And so I sort of turned to the young African fellas, and I basically said to them, is there a problem between us? And there was clearly no issue between us. And in fact, if you have a look at the police officer's statement, he says, I was not able to observe the source of any commotion. This is in one paragraph, and the very next paragraph below that, it says, prior to approaching a male I believed to be involved in a commotion. And then he says, I was told something by Constable D. Guerrilla. I was told that police communications were informed to have city safe cameras orientated towards the Valley Metro entry on Brunswick Street, and that city safe have confirmed the request. Now, prior to this incident occurring, it's very interesting because there is a CCTV camera, and now I wasn't actually going to put that up, but I think it's probably interesting and it's probably important that I do. But there was undercover police officers that were operating at that time, and you'll see that just prior to the camera actually zooming in on my face and then panning around and all the other people around that area, there's an undercover police officer that's in the shot, and he points with his chin, and then that camera zooms in on me. Now, it's only a short period of time thereafter, and then I'm actually attacked by these police officers. Now, the concerning part about that is they're using these CCTV cameras in order to target individual members of the public, and it's sort of like a percentage game at the end of the day. If they jump you and you're afraid of these criminals, chances are you're going to plead guilty, and 99% of the time, most likely this is going to occur because, you know, it's you up against a criminal organisation as big as what the police are. You know, they're like gangsters, you know. So anyway, I think they're playing a numbers game, similar how solicitors do, in order to, you know, profit and benefit at the end of the day from the, you know, abuse of their clients, you know. So anyway, like, because for the instance with WorkCover, it's the same thing. It's a percentage. I've had multiple solicitors say to me, you know, 96% of all cases will settle before they go to court, 3% will settle on the court steps, and 1% will actually proceed to court. And they're generally the ones where WorkCover is pursuing the person for fraud or some old thing like that. And it's a percentage game. Like, that's 100%, that's what it is. If you don't know that, now you do. So anyway, what ended up occurring then is these police continued to harass me. I've sworn because, you know, I'm being harassed. And like I've said, I think I said something like, "Oh, you're a dickhead, mate," you know. And they're saying to me, you know, they're saying to me like, "Swear again and we'll arrest you," and all this sort of thing. And I've then said to them, you know, like, I don't quote me on this. Like, this isn't a trial, and it's not 100% correct because, like, I don't have the evidence in front of me at this point in time. But effectively, this is what's happening: harassment. And in the end, you know, basically, I've said to them, "Am I under arrest or whatever?" They basically said no, and I said, "Well, then I'm free to go." So I've attempted to leave. Now, as I've attempted to leave, basically, I think I said, that's when I said, "Oh, you're a dickhead, mate," you know. And at that point in time, they've then surrounded me. And let me tell you, that's not a crime, okay? You can't be arrested for saying something like that at all. It's not a crime. And you can ask any solicitor that. And so anyway, what's ended up happening is they've then all surrounded me, effectively falsely imprisoning me, when I have every right to leave because I'm being harassed by these criminals. He's then actually said the words to me, "I'll teach you to respect authority." He's then pushed me backwards so far so as to push me off balance. As he's pushed me off balance, I've done what they actually it's called stuck in mud. It's a martial arts defensive move whereby you place pressure downwards on the person, and it places their energy down into their feet and prevents them from being able to attack effectively. And that's what I've done, is to stop him from attacking me. And as I've done that, all of the other officers have then attacked me. And I point out the fact that by him physically touching me, as he did, this is an assault at that very point in time. And because I have absolutely done nothing wrong, under every under law, I have every right to protect myself from this, you know, uninvited attack that is actually occurring. So anyway, I've at no time committed any offence. I have every right to protect myself from this threat because he's actually said to me, "I'll teach you to respect authority." It's almost like, you know, something out of South Park, you know, "You will respect my authority," you know, like it's kind of exactly like that, you know, like some idiot, you know, abusing their position of authority, think they can just do whatever they want. And I guess they can, because at the end of the day, none of these people have been prosecuted for the crimes they've committed, and they get away with it every day. So anyway, I'll move on. I was charged with multiple charges. Basically, I was charged with 2 accounts of public nuisance. One while I was on the street and prior to being attacked by them. And that was, I guess, me saying to him, oh, fuck off and you're a dickhead. That's the public nuisance, when the only reason I said them things is because I was actually being harassed by these idiots, So anyway, I was then also charged with assault or obstruct police officer in the performance of their duty on 2 accounts. And this story goes on. I was then basically abducted from the street, taken to the police station where further abuse took place. I then demanded to be taken to the hospital. I was then taken to the hospital, and I was in fact asking because I was concussed. I don't remember being at the police station at all. I come to whilst I was in the hospital. And then when I come to, I was actually asking the medical staff to contact the police commissioner for my protection. And at that point, I was then once again assaulted by the police in the hospital and charged with a public nuisance offence and 2 accounts of resist assault police whilst I was handcuffed and beaten in the hospital. It's amazing. But anyway, effectively what's ended up occurring is I represented the case, and I ended up having one of my lecturers assist me with the matter. And when we had the matter go to court, effectively they dropped all charges based on there being no evidence to offer of me ever committing any offence or doing anything wrong, and that is because I had actually done nothing wrong at any point in time, either prior or during or therefore after. And in fact, at all times, their conduct was an abuse of authority and, in fact, an assault, and it borders on much further and much more serious actual offences at the end of the day. So this is a paper produced from the the Magistrates Court. It's basically stating that there was no evidence to offer and all charges were dropped. So that's evidence that I was cleared of all charges, and in fact I had committed no offences. Now, it's quite concerning, but basically straight away after this had occurred, I had contacted the Crime and Corruption Commission, and effectively they did nothing. They didn't get evidence, they never contacted witness, they never did anything at all. They just basically wanted me just to go away, But what I ended up doing is, instead of going away, is I was made aware that the Queensland government was basically trying to cover up people releasing information pertaining to crime and corruption associated with the state. And they were doing this through the Crime and Corruption Commission, interestingly enough, which is who you would think would be wanting to expose corruption. But it appears that what they do is, in fact, enable and aid and abet criminal offenders within the Queensland government by basically failing to properly conduct any sort of investigation whatsoever. So basically they had an inquiry through the Crime and Corruption Commission. It was called Making Allegations of Corrupt Conduct Public. Is it in the public interest? Now, I don't know, but any reasonable or, half intelligent person would think that making corruption, exposing corruption would be clearly in the public's interest. So anyway, I produced I think it was a 31-page document. Yeah, 31-page document pertaining to corruption in the state of Queensland, including the things that went on with WorkCover Queensland as to the Crime and Corruption Commission. And basically in that I said that the Crime and Corruption Commission were aiding and abetting criminals, and I talked about the corruption with WorkCover Queensland. I talked about the corruption with the police and how they conduct themselves. All of a sudden, the Crime and Corruption Commission become very interested and decided that they were going to conduct an investigation. Now, I don't know why they did that. If you're not going to do a proper investigation, you might as well continue and just ignore it. But I guess because I sort of mentioned the fact that they're aiding and abetting criminals, they sort of had some motivation. And Mr. McSparron basically all of a sudden, I guess, thought that, maybe something should be done. So this is a letter, basically, and it comes from the QC, AJ McSparron, who is the chairperson of the Crime and Corruption Commission. I know these things are reversed, but anyway, he all of a sudden thought that it was kind of important that they should do an investigation, which you'd think was kind of important at the start, not years later. But anyway, because this is in 2016, all of a sudden they find it kind of important. Anyway, it's interesting how these things work. But what's ended up happening, as what happened with the investigation through the Crime and Misconduct Commission in the context of WorkCover Queensland, I give them a very detailed thing pertaining to the crimes and whatnot that had taken place. But what they did, you'll see the ones that are marked in green, they're the only things they paid any interest to, and even what they've got written on this document is actually watered down significantly from what I actually provided to them. So it's not even my complaint, it's their made up complaint, basically. But what they've done is, you'll see the only things getting investigated are the parts marked in green. This is from the Crime and Corruption Commission, as you can see there. And so basically only the bits in green are getting looked at all. And the rest of it is just completely ignored, because basically the Crime and Corruption Commission are preventing any proper investigation and avoiding prosecuting criminal offenders within the Queensland government. See, and this is done, I guess, probably to protect their positions of employment, because at the end of the day, if you start prosecuting the government for the crimes they're committing, they're going to cut your funds and you won't be employed anymore. So anyway, I guess that's why that occurs. I guess you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours, sort of thing. That's how that is. So anyway, what ended up happening is, as happened with WorkCover Queensland, the investigation was watered down. The matter was then basically handed over to the internal investigation group and a detective by the name of Detective Sergeant Green. Now, basically what happened is the Queensland Police investigated themselves for crime and corruption, and this lady found the police to be innocent. All of the police officers are innocent. And but it's quite amazing, because despite the very clear evidence that multiple crimes happened, in fact, assault occasioning grievous bodily harm, disabling in order to commit an indictable offence, perjury, like some serious crimes, disabling in order to commit an indictable offence carries life imprisonment. But, it's okay if you're a police officer, to do these things. So anyway, what's ended up... basically, I'll just read to you what she comes back with. She says, in the complaint you allege the officers unlawfully arrested you, used excessive force, displayed unprofessional conduct towards yourself, tampered with or destroyed evidence, threatened to assault yourself and your wife. Because I had the police officer in the hospital standing over me going, "You got a wife? You got a wife, eh?" And was literally implying that he would come to my house and rape my wife or do some other abuse to my wife. Like, it's pretty out there, like these are some serious criminals. Like, this is like gangster. They talk about bikies, man. Holy, I've never had a bikie threaten my wife, especially when my wife's, got nothing to do with anything, but this is what these criminals do, Anyway, and falsified information in their statements for court, which they did anyway. Her response then says, I have caused inquiries to be conducted into your complaint. These inquiries revealed there was insufficient evidence to substantiate the allegations subject of your complaint. However, deficiencies in an officer's use of force procedures were identified and they have completed relevant training. So effectively, if you're a police officer, you can go around, commit very serious crimes, maim people for their life, for the rest of their life, and instead of going to prison or, being prosecuted or anything in any way whatsoever, you get some extra training on how to beat people up more efficiently, I guess. I don't know, what sort of training that is. It's like, oh, next time if you really choke him out harder, he might, pass out quicker and you can just drag him back to the police station. I don't know what they're actually teaching these idiots, but that's effectively, what went down there. So anyway, look, it's a disgusting state of affairs. It's a real problem. I don't know how you fix it, but I'm trying to seek some sort of justice for it. There is one other thing that I forgot to mention that I also think is very important. I mentioned about the use of facial recognition cameras at the time of the G20, but there's an even more concerning part that I did forget to mention. Now, when I was assaulted back in 1997, the police officer Benjamin Price was part of what they called the Major Events Planning Unit. Now, I'm not exactly 100% certain what the context of major events relates to in the title that he worked there under, but it's quite interesting and I think a little bit concerning that at the time when that event occurred, there was a bikie shootout in Mackay, and they sent down police officers from what is obviously, a major events response unit to deal with these issues. And but the point that I'm getting at here is that when I was attacked in 2014, this police officer, Daniel Gurria, was part of what they call the Intelligence, Counter-Terrorism and Major Events Unit. Now, the fact that it's got the same title, Major Events, at the end of it, and a couple of other titles, since 2011 added to it, I don't know how that works, but I can tell you that I was targeted that day. I don't know why I was targeted, but it's very questionable. Maybe they see me as a payer because I had paid last time. I don't know how or why I was targeted. I really can't explain that. But the fact that in 1999, I was attacked by a bloke involved in the Major Events Planning Unit, and then in 2014, I was attacked by the Intelligence, Counter-Terrorism and Major Events Unit. I think is very concerning. They appear to be the same group. But the Intelligence, Counter-Terrorism and Major Events Unit operates out of the Mount Gravatt State Intelligence Bureau now. I don't know what the significance of that is, but I think it's actually very important. Anyway, okay, thank you for your time. Bye.